Hi everyone, you can see I have my friend and makeup artist Nikki LaRose here.
Hi.
Today we're obviously talking about makeup and the topic is all about blush and specifically the mistakes that we see people make and how to fix it. All right, so let's just hop right into it. What is the first mistake that you see people make with blush?
I think one of the mistakes you see initially is people just not wearing it. Like if you utilize it the right way, blush is such an important step to your makeup and just your overall appearance too. Like if you're putting time into your makeup, don't skip blush. It's such a great tie-in for the rest of your makeup and it can really make or break your look too.
I feel like when people are wearing foundation and concealer and really kind of just clearing out all the dimension in their face.
Right, when you think about it, you're canceling out all your pigmentation. So all that natural pigmentation you have like in your cheeks, like when you get flushed or just that you have naturally, when you put your foundation on and your concealer on, you're canceling out all of your natural pigmentation and you're ending up very flat, right? So then that's why we bring in bronzers and blush to bring back that warmth and that pigmentation. So it is so important that you choose the right blush, choose the right formula, and then you apply it.
What would be your tip for someone who just doesn't use blush, and it's not because they don't want to, but because they don't know? Is it best to use a powder blush or a cream blush? Is there a specific color that basically is like universal or good for somebody who hasn't tried something?
So someone who's just getting started with blush and is more intimidated by it and doesn't really know how to pick a color or pick a formula, I would say two things to keep in mind if you're just starting out would be to apply a powder blush. I think they're generally more easy to blend on. You grab a nice fluffy brush, you smile in the mirror, you get the apples, you dust it upwards, and then you're good to go. So sticking to a powder formula I think is just really user-friendly if you don't have a lot of makeup skill, and also stick to neutral colors. So if you're not sure what's gonna look most flattering on your skin tone, stick to neutrals. Earth tones are gonna be your best friend. Don't go for anything too far out there like a hot pink because they're gonna be harder to blend.
Right.
They're gonna be more detectable, which you want to see your blush, but you don't really wanna see it, right? You want to enhance your face, not like overwhelm it. So stick to colors that are really nice and neutral and really soft.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the reason why a lot of people avoid blush is because they've played with blush and they feel like they look clown-like.
Yeah, oh, that's the biggest thing I hear is like, not too much blush, I don't wanna look like a clown. I got you, totally get it. But if you avoid super bright colors, and I'm not saying for everyone, some people look amazing in super bright colors, but if you're just starting out and you're intimidated, stick to neutrals and try a really nice matte powder formula.
And speaking of neutral colors, one of my favorite blushes of all time, or at least right now, it's like my favorite, is by Laura Mercier, and the color is Fresco. And when you first look at it, you're like, that's not gonna give you a lot of color.
Yeah.
And it's more about, it just looks natural and pretty, and it's so easy to use. She introduced me to it. It was actually sitting in my collection for the longest time.
You had it for a long time, and it was like collecting dust. Yeah. And I pulled it, I was like, this is amazing, we have to use this, and now you're hooked.
Hooked. And actually another one that I really love called Chai.
Love that Chai. One you have so Chai pretty. On right now.
Oh, I have Chai on right now. I sometimes don't even know what I'm wearing because I've got NIKKI. Chai and Fresco, but Fresco especially, my favorite.
But what's great about picking a neutral one and one that's like more like I just said, like underwhelming is you have like the freedom when you're doing your makeup to do a bold eye makeup or do a bold lip and not really worry about your blush clashing with the rest of your makeup. So it gives you a little more freedom.
Well, that actually leads to maybe mistake number 2, because this is something I even picked up from you. And I would say mistake number 2 is choosing the wrong color with your makeup, right?
Yeah, that's a big mistake for a lot of people.
For a lot of people, myself included, and I think this is why I like Fresco so much, is because it is so neutral that I'm not like making a mistake if I choose a lip color that doesn't blend well with it, that doesn't complement it.
Or if you just want to switch out your lipstick throughout the day, like we do that a lot on set when we're filming throughout the day. We switch out your lip color and your top color, and sometimes blush can even clash with your wardrobe too. So it's another thing you have to keep in mind. What are you gonna wear? What are you gonna put on your lips? Are you gonna switch out your lipstick, especially if you're going from like day to night? Like let's say you're going to the office during the day, right? You put on your neutral blush, you put on your neutral lipstick, but then at night you wanna pop on a red lipstick. What if you have like a hot pink blush on? Then you gotta buff that off, or if you keep it on, it's gonna clash with that red lipstick.
Yeah.
Just examples of like things you should keep in mind when you're applying your blush and also when you're choosing it for the day.
I find myself doing this sometimes where I'll have like my makeup exactly the way I want it, and then I go for a blush and I put it on and I'm like, oh, this just didn't do what I wanted it to do,
Yeah.
and now I feel like my makeup looks kind of ugly.
Yeah.
There's just something about choosing the wrong color, right? What's an easy way to like figure out what color would be best for the look you're going for?
You're trying to figure out what you want your makeup to look like for the day. Pick it all out at the same time. That's one way to look at it too. It's
Wait,
kind of
this
simple.
is actually, you know what, that makes a lot of sense because that is my mistake is I just have like a bunch of makeup. I'll like open up my makeup bag and just like everything gets like thrown out onto my table.
Right.
And then I start just picking things according to what I want to wear that day.
Right, but you're not necessarily keeping in mind overall, like, what is that color story gonna look like together, right? You're just kind of cherry picking, like, oh, I like this blush. Oh, I'm really into that eyeshadow. I think I'm gonna do this lip instead.
Yeah.
But then we put it all together, sometimes it doesn't look cohesive. And I think that's one thing that people have a really hard time with. And that's why I do wanna go back to, like, overall, if you struggle with this, make your life easier and just pick a neutral blush. It gives you more freedom, gives you more options.
Makes sense, and it's probably the reason why I reach for Fresco all the time now.
Yeah, and chai.
And chai.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can stay on that one topic of blush forever, but let's go ahead and move on to another mistake that you see with blush.
Just not being open to different blush formulas. Like there's so many different formulas on the market and there's so many amazing ones. So, you know, for example, like there's of course powder matte blushes, there's powder shimmery blushes, which are beautiful. There's liquid blushes, like we've been trying a lot recently.
Yeah.
And then there's creams with shimmer. So there's stains too.
Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about stains.
There's also stains. So there's so many different formulas. It's good to be open and just really choosing and playing with it and seeing what works best with your skin type. Because it's gonna be trial and error. You know, you might have to try it before you figure out like what works best for your skin and how it wears throughout the day too.
Oh, that's a good call. I think people sometimes initially like the way their makeup looks. Like I'll get messages from people saying like, my makeup does X, Y, and Z at the end of the day. And it's like, well, I don't know, maybe it's the makeup you're using.
Yep.
Right? Like sometimes it's the makeup you're using, sometimes it's your own error, but you have to like, you know, like try all of these different things. You, for instance, told me that you used to be like always dead set on only using powder.
Yes, back in basically my entire life up until like very recently when my skin kind of changed, I was always extremely oily. I mean, super duper disco oil.
Until she figured out the right skincare routine.
Yes, which is just hydration and moisturizer. And now my skin's totally different. I absolutely embrace creams, but for the longest time, like majority of my life, and my makeup career, I stuck to powder blushes on me personally. I just wasn't open-minded to the idea of using a cream or a liquid, and I think that's a really big mistake, is being open-minded, right, and trying different formulas and seeing what's gonna work best for your skin type.
All right, what's the next mistake? I'm ready for it. I kind of know what you're gonna say for the next mistake because this is the one that you have just drilled into my head, and it took me, 3 years to finally absorb it and start to follow your rule?
I think longer, actually.
So this goes to show you guys, I'm really stubborn. Even if I know, I still won't do things.
Yeah, we get stuck in our ways, totally. But placement is so huge with all your makeup, really. But since we're talking about blush placement can make or break the whole situation.
Yeah, the whole look, right?
Sounds dramatic, but when you see the difference in like, you know, wrong placement or just not the most flattering placement versus very flattering placement, you will see the difference. It will make or break your makeup look. So for example, what I mean by placement is where you place the blush, like depending on like how high or how low you place it, a lot of people make the mistake of going way too low with their blush. And I think we've actually talked about this before. We're big on this. So let's say you put just too low, too far down the apples of your cheeks, it will drag down the appearance of your face, which again, it sounds dramatic, but if you actually look at pictures of yourself with the wrong blush placement, it'll either lift your features and lift your cheeks up, or it will bring it down, which no one wants anything to be brought down. Let's be real, right?
No one wants to look saggy.
So placement is a huge thing. For us, for example, we love a nice high swooped up blush. So when I'm
high everything. I want everything up here now. Like everything's starting to go down. Like I'm 40, so like I feel like as I'm getting, you know, like I'm starting to head into like all of my 40s and get to 50, I want to be like as high as possible, knowing that like gravity wants to do the opposite to me. So
and this doesn't apply for everyone. Like, you know, those young bucks out there, you can kind of put your blush
wherever and you look really
kind of wherever you want, and you're gonna look great no matter what. But when you're taking your age into consideration, sadly, you know, you gotta be real with yourself and bring it up, because it's gonna bring up your features, and
just
gravity's
like
trying to pull it down.
You want your boobies up, you want your cheekbones up too.
Yeah, so it's like little tweaks and little like tricks like that can really make such a huge difference when you're applying your blush of how your overall appearance looks.
So when you're saying that people need to place it in the right area, what specifically are you saying is the right placement?
Well, I mean, just to say again too, like it's different for everyone. Everyone has different facial structure and different bone structure, so keep that in mind. But in my experience, what I think is the most flattering is keeping your blush higher up than you would normally think to put it. So, you know, you look in the mirror, you smile, your apples are right here, right? I actually go a little bit above that and then I tap it, because when you're blending it, you kind of lose a little bit of control, right? And it ends up going in places that you don't want to anyway. So rather than starting where you would think to apply it, which is actually on the apples, when you start blending it, it ends up going lower and lower than you would want it to go, right? Because you lose a little bit of control when you're blending. You know, the brush kind of spreads out, right? So by starting out higher, you're gonna end up higher up, and then therefore you're gonna have that beautiful lifted, sculpted effect. When you're applying your blush, you don't wanna just see it in one spot. So a lot of people make the mistake of just popping it. Okay, my cheeks are here, right? I'm looking in the mirror, my cheeks are here, I'm gonna pop it right in my cheek.
Right, they just kind of go like that, right?
And then that's when you get that clown look, regardless of color too. Like you can even
or
take
like a
neutral
doll or something.
Yeah, yes, exactly, a baby doll look. You wanna end up-
Which is a look, but
It is a look.
it depends on if
No
what you're
shade on
going
that.
for.
Yeah. So rather than just popping it on the apples of your cheeks, you want to make sure that you're taking the time, you're blending it, and you're making it cohesive. And that's why one of the tricks that I love is bringing it up kind of in like a little half moon shape around your face, almost where people put bronzer too. I love it in this area, even like bringing it around the temple, because it just makes your whole look more cohesive. And it's going to end up making your blush a part of your overall face.
And this will probably lead into the next mistake is you just don't want any of your makeup features to be like, bam, this is standing out, unless it's like your eye makeup or your lip.
You wouldn't want to see your bronzer in just one spot, unblended, right? So it's the same thing with your blush. Blend it into the rest of your features, make it nice and smooth and cohesive. You don't really want to see like abruptly where your blush starts and stops.
Okay, so what's the next mistake?
Choosing the wrong tools to apply your blush. That's a big one.
You mean like don't always use your fingers?
Yes, there's a time and a place for fingers.
I'm one of those people that just loves to be so lazy. No, it's not lazy. I really should stop saying lazy. It's I'm in a damn hurry.
Yeah, you don't have time.
I never have time for anything if it's not a very specific day where I have Nikki here to help me and we're gonna shoot videos. You know, I will say for the longest time, I always use the same type of blush brush because it's been drilled into my head just from marketing and stuff that you have to use that one specific blush brush.
That's always huge, right?
It's always like pretty fluffy and big.
Yeah.
It's always fluffy.
Maybe not huge, but like it's always
like
fluffy.
It's always really fluffy. And when you buy brush sets, it always has a blush brush.
Yeah.
And so you assume over time that like that is the brush you are always going to use and it gets drilled into your head.
The tool can, again, make or break the appearance of your blush. So let's say you're having fun and you decide to do like a hot pink blush, but you just want a touch of it. You know, you don't want to see like a ton of it, right? You just want like a little hint of it, but you end up grabbing like this big, fluffy blush brush. And then it ends up depositing that blush everywhere. And then you look like, oh my God, this is, you know, I look like a clown. I have way too much blush on. Instead, opt for something a little bit smaller, something with more control. I love smaller, fluffy, angled brushes. So many brands have them. That'll give you more control. And if it has an angle on it, it almost like has a built-in guide. So you want to take that angle and actually like, that's actually what we used today on your blush. We used a fluffy angle brush. And by using that angle and positioning it the right way, it almost does the work for you, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what you turned me on to also, because I used to be either apply all my cream blushes with my fingers or BeautyBlender. Like I would tap it on and then I'd take my BeautyBlender and just start patting it and then it would just spread so much.
Yeah.
And I would just have this like bunch of blush on because it just spread everywhere. And also it just looked blotchy sometimes, right?
Right, but you know why I look blotchy?
Why?
Because your initial application was putting it on with a finger where you don't have much control. A lot of people will argue with me on this, and that's totally fine. But to me, it ended up being blotchy because that initial application of the fingertip, you didn't have a lot of control. There's ridges, there's grooves in your fingers. It's not smooth.
Yep.
Okay, no matter what. And unless you're using like just the ball of your finger to tap, 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 it's still gonna be blotchy.
Yeah, and when I'm using my fingers, I am just trying to rush through it. The thing you taught me to use with my cream blushes, to apply my cream blushes, is to you know, like use like a more of like a densely packed brush,
Yes.
but also kind of like more of a kabuki brush.
Yes.
Also, and that has been such a game changer for me because you've also taught me to stipple it on.
Stipple it, pat it in, stipple that
Yep.
product in. So me, for example, like I mentioned, I have a cream blush on. It's a creamy, like more of like a sheer shimmery formula. So what I did for application of this formula is I got a kabuki brush. It's more of like a rounded one that's a little more dense, but still has a little bit of fluff to it, right? It's something you would typically grab for like a liquid foundation application. But I use that brush because I dipped it into the product, and then once I had a lot on the brush, I then took it on the top of my hand and I worked it even more into that brush and really warmed it up on the top of my hand, and then I applied it. And I talk about this too a lot, like not going in with like cold products. Like you want to warm up your creams because the colder they are, the harder and more stubborn they are to blend.
Right, and
So
then
by
you're
warming
like
it up, yeah.
trying to work too much and maybe moving all your other makeup. If there's one brush I would suggest is the one that I have like 3 or 4 versions of. You know which one it is?
The Laura Mercier one?
No.
Oh.
The It Cosmetics one.
Yeah, that's a great brush.
The double-ended. We were just saying too that
Yeah.
we don't love double-ended brushes, but
don't.
this double-ended brush is like
Yeah,
the best.
it
It
is.
has like almost like a kabuki kind of brush. It's just a densely packed brush. On the other end of it, you can kind of use it to, you know, like I use it sometimes to put bronzer and blush on my eyelids,
Yeah.
to get like bronzer
Do the
here on the sides of
nose.
my nose and stuff. So I use it for both blush and for bronzer, and it's an amazing brush. I love it.
It is because it's dense, but it still has like some fluff to it. So there's more ease when you're applying it, right? It's still like workable.
Yeah, and you can use it for several different makeup applications.
You can use it for creams, powders, liquids, anything. It's such a multi-purpose.
Yeah. It's one of the
Great
best brushes.
tool.
I see everybody using it. It's like
Yeah.
It Cosmetics did a really good job of like
They did.
sending
They
it
really-
out to people in PR, and then we got like so hooked on it that
Yeah.
we like have to have lots of them around.
Yeah, like once you have it, you kind of rely on that brush
Yeah.
for so much.
Yeah, it's an amazing brush. So what if you're like me and you really are just in a hurry? Because I know that a lot of people watching are moms like me, we're working. We just don't have the time to, you know, like think about all the different tools that we're gonna use.
And I totally understand that completely. But I will say, I actually think it makes your life easier, and I think it's more efficient with your time. Instead of using your fingertips or your fingers, which to me, I think you have to work harder and longer to blend your products with your fingertips. And I think it's more frustrating for people too, to the point where they probably give up because they're like, oh, it's good enough, you know?
Yeah.
Or I'll skip blush because it takes too long to blend it out with my fingers.
I definitely walk out the door sometimes being like, well, that's just gonna have to do.
Listen, I do that too, okay? I do that too. We're human. But instead, I would really suggest taking a damp beauty sponge or a beauty blender, whatever you have, and using that instead of your fingertips. Now hear me out, because it takes a lot less blending. So what I would do, or what I would suggest, is taking like the biggest, like the roundest part of your beauty sponge, not the pointed end, but the ball of it, right? Let's say you have a liquid. You have a liquid, pop it on the top of your hand, take the rounded part of your beauty blender, and then tap, 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 and dab it in. And then from there, you go straight to your cheeks, tap, 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 and you're done. You don't have to rub. You don't have to take a ton of time really blending it out. It really just does the work for you if you just bounce it on the skin. Same with your creams. Let's say you have a cream blush, take the roundest part of the beauty sponge, tap, 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 tap it onto your cheeks, and you're done. It could be so easy. I think it's just kind of like switching that mindset of like, oh, it's quicker to not use a tool and just use my fingers, but it's not.
Yep.
Because you have to work harder to blend with your fingertips than you do with a tool.
It's true. So I feel like we could probably talk about all the mistakes and the tips for days. So let's just go ahead and end it here. And then if there's a request for another video, we can definitely do another video on this topic, right?
Yeah, or if we left out any mistakes, like let us know. Because I would love to know if I feel like we covered a lot of them. I feel like we covered really good ones.
Like the main ones, right? Yeah.
So if we left them out, let us know.
Let us know in the comments. And you can also find Nikki on Instagram. She is at Makeup by Nikki LaRose. I am on Instagram at Susan Yara. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.